Hey guys, Brett Weiss here. Welcome to another video. Once again, we've got Adam Koralik here. If you don't know who Adam is, you probably do if you watch my channel. He's a hardcore Sega fan, one might say a fanatic. And he is here just hanging out in my game room, and we're gonna talk about his top 5 Sega Dreamcast games of all time, because he is maybe the Sega guy, or at least a Sega guy, because
I would argue I'm the Dreamcast guy that is not Max,
right?
AKA the actual Dreamcast guy. There's a whole big story there, but he and I are good.
Right.
It's funny.
But if you know Adam, if you know Adam's channel, you definitely associate him with Sega. So I thought it would be fun to get on here. Now the Dreamcast is kind of an interesting system for me.
To be fair to that,
yes,
you either associate me with Sega or possibly obesity. I
Let's
do have
go
a travel channel that's half about eating. Let's be
True.
real.
And flying, you're not exactly burning a lot of calories while you're flying either.
No, I mean the plane does, but not me.
Right.
Although I love getting an aisle seat so that I can use the bathroom more efficiently.
There you go. I pick aisle seat every time. Yes.
You do as you get older, guys.
Plus, I'm
the
tall.
novelty of the window goes
Yes.
away.
Plus,
Anyway.
I'm tall and I like to have a little bit more room on with the aisle seat. So we're gonna go through your top 5 favorite Dreamcast games. Now, for me, the Dreamcast, I sort of consider it the first modern system. When I think of modern consoles, I think from the Dreamcast to the present. Because when I play the Dreamcast, it still feels sort of modern, you know, because it could go online and because the games, the graphics hold up. I think it's an excellent system. I still love playing the Dreamcast. So we're gonna go through your top 5 favorite games. Now, is this in any kind of order?
No, first, I want to address what you just said. And then, no, this is not in any particular order, except for the last one.
Right.
I actually totally disagree with you on
Fair enough.
the first modern system, although I can see that vantage point. I'm not saying he's wrong. This is just...
So my basic point is if someone says, what do you consider retro gaming? I consider before the Dreamcast. What do you consider modern gaming, Dreamcast to the present?
And I'm not saying you're wrong, except you are wrong. But
Yes.
it's basically, I'm not going to even say it's a matter of opinion. It kind of is, but it kind of isn't. First of all, I'm going to break that down by saying retro gaming, I hate to break this to you, is currently, at the time we make this video, the PlayStation 4 and the Xbox One.
Well,
The simple argument is, it is no longer the focus of that corporation.
Right.
They still make content occasionally, sure, but they clearly don't focus on it. They don't manufacture the hardware. You can buy a new PS4 as easily as you can buy a new PlayStation 2. They don't make it anymore.
Well, retro is a relative term.
Yeah, but because you're choosing to.
Right.
It's a generation behind, it's no longer production, and it is no longer the focus of that company.
Right.
It might have trickle games that come out, but so does the Atari 2600. Are we arguing now that Atari's like, we're making an HDMI one, that it's relevant again?
Right.
That's not always how it works. You got to draw a line somewhere. I'm kind of anal about this.
Right.
So I actually will very hardcore draw the line at what's the previous generation. It's the retro from there. It just makes you feel old. That's the fundamental reason none of us like it.
When I'm playing my PS2 and I'm playing God of War 2, I do not feel like I'm retro gaming.
Doesn't matter. No, because you're misrepresenting that word to mean nostalgia gaming.
Right.
Nostalgia gaming is different. Retro just means not current. That's all it means.
Argument for another day, because we got to get to your Dreamcast
Sure,
games.
right. And the crowd hates me now for this, but fine. I'm just trying to make you feel
All good,
old,
all
guys.
good,
That's all it
good,
is.
all good.
Right, now, with the Dreamcast specifically, the other thing I disagree with there, I don't see it as the first modern console. I actually see it as the last gamer's console.
Okay.
So here's the thing. I actually very fundamentally believe this. There are a few gaming companies throughout the history of manufacturing that are gaming dedicated companies. Nintendo being the most obvious purist, because I mean, other than the fact that they originally started as like a board game company, Nintendo,
Playing cards.
yeah, Nintendo, exactly.
Somebody's gonna say something.
Yeah, of course, it's fine. I appreciate it.
Right.
The point is, Nintendo never sat down. It's like, let's be a multi-technological conglomerate. That's not their thing. They don't also like, oh, let's make cars. You know, like they focus on one thing.
Right.
Now, granted, they've made a couple oddities over the years.
Love
sure.
hotels and
and
toys and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
but basically, in the last few decades,
but the
video
love
games.
hotels, that's a Japanese thing, by the way,
Right.
because the Japanese have this philosophy of scattershot and see what works.
Right. But the last few decades, it's all about video games.
So, with that in mind, there's only a handful of companies that's ever applied to in the video game industry. Atari's an obvious one.
Right.
SNK, Sega.
Right.
And then on the other side of things, you have technological conglomerates who happen to have a video game division. That would be Microsoft. That would be Sony. The more recent ones. But you can go...
And going back, you go to Coleco, Magnavox, RCA.
Apple even, Panasonic. Like, you get it. You get what we're saying here. So, and this is a small point, but I can kind of prove it. Who has ever referred to a PlayStation as a Sony? Who has ever referred to an Xbox as a Microsoft?
Right.
But I'll bet you've referred to a Genesis as a Sega. I'll bet you referred to a GameCube as a Nintendo.
Sure.
I'm just making the point that company's name is so iconically associated with video games that it is not, that is more of a gamer console. So with that in mind, and understanding basic marketing strategy that was applied over time, the Dreamcast, if you ask me, was the last console actually marketed specifically to gamers. It did not attempt to sell you on any sort of additional oddities in the sense that it wasn't like, oh, I can play DVDs, which is right around the corner. Now, to be fair, that was a smart move on Sony's part. I'm not saying it wasn't. But it was a thing where they just said, we have to completely make you interested in us based on the games that we've got. We have nothing else. And I know people will turn around and be like, GameCube! I get it. Here's the counterpoint. Dreamcast was basically marketed to adults, people who had grown up on video games at that point, and people who were just kind of interested in the future of video games. This online thing would be a nice perk. What else do I want to try? All these exploration games, Shenmue, and so on and so
forth.
Sophisticated gaming, essentially.
2K
for gamers.
Games and stuff.
Even that stuff, even the sports stuff. You got to remember how kind of new and revolutionary that was. And the fact that the VMU would show you the plays and stuff. Like, it was designed not for children. It was designed for gamers. The GameCube, even though we don't like to think of it this way, the simple truth is it was designed for children.
It's a toy.
It's a toy. It looks like a toy. It has a handle. It's purple. Like, it's designed for children. Now, don't get me wrong. GameCube's an unbelievable game console.
It's a badass console.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And it has wonderful gaming experiences on it.
Resident Evil 4 is just amazing.
I'm not taking anything away from the GameCube. I'm simply saying you have to look at how they marketed it, how they thought of it internally. Sega thought the Dreamcast is for gamers. Nintendo thought the GameCube is for children. They did that on purpose. You do know that. Learn your history. Study that. They did that because they... All right, let's look at Nintendo right now. Would you say that the Switch is trying to go head-to-head with Sony and Microsoft in the competing space?
They're doing their own thing.
Exactly. Oh, let's go back a little bit further. Do you think the Wii U was trying to go directly ahead with that?
Not even
doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Do you think the Wii...
Totally doing their own thing.
Nintendo was trying to do their own thing. They were trying to do their own thing by being like, we'll focus on kids. Let the adults have the PlayStation 2. They had some media thing. At that point, it'd been out over a year. They understood that. Xbox is right around the corner. It's going to be a big media corporate thing. Let them do their... We'll just have the little kids console, which then eventually they kind of changed their mind, to be fair. They started being like, hey, we have Resident Evil and everything. Like, I get it.
Right.
But I'm just talking about when it came out, Dreamcast was the last dedicated gamers console. With the exception of the new one. Obviously, everybody remembers the new one. That is the true
Space Invaders
gamers console.
On the new one.
Oh, that's right. There was a version.
Yes.
I'm kidding about that. Okay, so with all that ridiculous 9 minutes of setup, let's talk about my
For the few of you that are still here.
Yeah, the two of you that are like, oh, this is still playing. I walked out of the room. Okay, so top 5 favorite Dreamcast games. We are not doing this in any particular order except for number 1. So I'm going to kind of lump a couple together just so that you can get a couple more answers.
I cheat a lot on my channel as far as just lumping. Here's my top 10 list and there's 23 games.
You cheat on your channel?
Wait a minute.
With other channels?
That came out wrong.
Wow.
We're
not...
I play with the rules.
No,
okay, whatever.
Your
Carry on.
Is your domain. Cheat on all the channels you want. Anyway, so for real though. At number 5, I'm actually going to go with Ikaruga.
Nice.
I think that it's kind of...
I've always called it Ikaruga. Am I saying it wrong?
Yo, definitely.
Yes.
It's Japanese phonetics.
Yes.
Ikaruga.
Yeah. What do I know?
not Japanese.
Right.
So yeah, anyway, Ikaruga, which would be more formal pronunciation, is actually a really good shoot 'em up. I'm sure a lot of you have played it. It's kind of standing in here as a representation of the fact that the Dreamcast had so many shoot 'em ups towards the end of its lifespan. It still kind of does in the independent scene.
Right, and overseas, man,
but-
there's a lot of...
Yeah, the Japanese love that in particular. But that one, I mean, it's kind of weird because Ikaruga was this game that came out after the Dreamcast was considered defunct, and it just really was good. It kind of blew a lot of people's minds that was coming.
I got the
out.
GameCube version.
Get the Dreamcast version.
I need to.
All right then. But yeah, no, it's an incredible game. Obviously, highly recommended.
Bullet hell.
Yeah, it's been re-released a bunch of times now. It's very easy to get if you want to do it digitally. and
Easy
all
to
that.
get, but hard to play. It's
That
a
is absolutely
challenging
true.
game.
I never could be good at it. I just
Right.
really liked it.
And the color-coded bullets and stuff.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
fascinating
there's a
game.
reason. Yeah, it's a reason for that. You're swapping so that the black shoots the white shoots the black, or
Yes.
something like that. Yeah. And you can absorb the same color and gain power. It's a unique.
strategic bullet hell game that will drive you insane
It's also-
while you're having fun,
It's also the sequel to Radiant Silvergun for the Sega Saturn.
which was not, unfortunately, not released in the U.S.
Yes, but it has been digitally.
Well,
since.
I mean,
But yeah, I don't.
It's
physically
back in the
recall
day,
it, yeah.
physically.
Yeah, it was a long time before that came around.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I like that game.
Yes.
So again, I said it stands in for a few games. This is going to kind of apply in general here. So the next one that comes to my mind would be the Crazy Taxi games.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
excellent.
Crazy Taxi 1 more so than Crazy Taxi 2. But Crazy Taxi 1, like, I played the crap out of that. Yeah. Like, I mean, Offspring, which of course is, if you play like other versions of it, you have no idea what I'm talking about because Sega had to
It's
remove
indelible.
that music.
Yeah.
They had to remove a lot of the music from most versions because
It goes with that game so well.
It's perfect.
That's one of my favorite mission-based games of all time.
Yeah, it's a very good pick-up-and-play arcade-style game, which makes sense because it derived from an arcade.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely fantastic. Like, I remember being so into that game that I started using Game Shark to try and disable the timers just so I could drive around and explore and like see the map
That's
and everything. Like, I was just trying to figure out what that game was. You know,
Right.
I really loved it. It's such a basic concept, but it's just really fun and addictive.
You know, for the console, they should have had that option where you can just turn that off and explore.
Yeah,
Why
I
not?
guess. I don't know, but they didn't. But like,
Yeah.
I was easy enough to put Game Shark codes on and do that.
Right.
So, Crazy Taxi 2 I quite liked. I just didn't think it was quite as good. Crazy Taxi 3, which is on the Xbox, I didn't really enjoy all that much. And they haven't.
I've seen that for sale, but I never picked it up.
Yeah, I don't have much to say about it. I know they did a couple. There's a Game Boy Advance one. There's a Fair Wars for PSP. I think it's kind of a dead sense. There is sort of a spiritual successor in Taxi Chaos,
I've heard of that.
which Sega technically released as a distributor in Japan, but I can tell you firsthand they're like, nope, that ain't ours.
Right.
So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Crazy Taxi 1, the Dreamcast version
Yes,
specifically.
yes.
When I say Dreamcast, I don't mean when you go onto Steam or Xbox 360 in particular and say part of the Dreamcast collection. Yeah, that's the PC version, and it's very different. It's the music is wiped out, the corporate tie-ins are wiped out, which might sound like that's a good thing. It's not. Part of why Crazy Taxi was a lot of fun is because where you're going are real locations. You're going to like, oh, take me to Pizza Hut, and you're like, all right, I know Pizza Hut sucks, but I'll go to Pizza Hut. Instead, you're like, take me to pizza.
Right. It did add a lot of charm
It
to that
added
and fun to that game.
novelty
And
as
you
well.
definitely want to play with a Dreamcast controller.
Yeah.
It works beautifully with that game.
People give the Dreamcast controller crap, and I'm like, here's the thing. It's different than the modern ergonomics of a controller,
Right.
yes, but it works incredibly well with games it was designed for.
It does, yes.
So, all right, that's the Crazy Taxi stuff. After that, I'm going to give the nod to the Resident Evil games in general. There were 3 on the Dreamcast. There was Resident Evil 2, 3, and Code Veronica. My favorite of those 3 would be Resident Evil 2 by far. Resident Evil 2, I maintain, is the best Resident Evil game ever made. Though I will give a legitimate point to possibly Resident Evil 2 Remake being better. I've played both. The nostalgia part of me says the original, and then the other part of me says, I don't know, man. Like, I really like that remake. But anyway, Resident Evil 2. Absolutely.
For me, I played Resident Evil 2 on the N64 because I was writing for the All Game Guide when it came out, and they sent me a copy, and I played it on the N64. Loved it, big time. I'm sure the Dreamcast version's better.
But yeah, substantially. But yeah, Resident Evil 2 I think is amazing. 3 I've never really enjoyed all that much. It's fine. And then Code Veronica I loved a lot earlier on. I went back to it and kind of didn't really... Like, I did a Resident Evil marathon last year, and I was kind of going through all the games again. Code Veronica is interesting because it's been re-released but not like remade. They just kind of skipped over it. You know, like if you notice
They
lately,
put it on the PS2, right?
yeah, that was a while ago though.
Yeah.
So like, there's the 2 remake, there's the 3 remake, the 4 remake just came out. They just skipped over Code Veronica, which I'm gonna give you guys a little. Not that you need the video to be longer. Obviously, we all want it to be longer. That way, you guys can do your laundry or whatever you're doing. So let me tell you a little story because I'm full of stories. Resident Evil Code Veronica is actually Resident Evil 3, and Resident Evil 3 Nemesis is actually the spin-off game. So here's a factoid. After the success of Resident Evil 2, and that was such a big hit for the PS1 in particular, Sony was like, we want the next Resident Evil game exclusively. Resident Evil 3 has to be exclusive to the PS1. And Capcom signed a deal to that effect, saying, you got it, money, deal. The dev team was like, we're not interested in that. Like, have you seen this thing? They're referring to the Dreamcast. Like, we're building Resident Evil 3 for that. Like, this is new tech. We want to do that. And they're like, you can't. You have to release Resident Evil 3 on there. And they're like, well, we're working on this, like, spin-off thing. And then so they just... The names. They put the name of Resident Evil 3 on the spin-off game that was meant to just kind of be like, oh, here's what Jill was doing during Resident Evil 2. That's really all it is.
Right.
It was, you can almost think of it as like DLC without the DLC part.
Right.
You know, it was weird. So they're like, yeah, that's Resident Evil 3. That way that game could come out in PS1. That's why the game's only one disc, why it's not that long, why it's not that great. Like, it's just kind of a nothing game. And Resident Evil Code Veronica, they put a ton of effort into. But they had to call it a spin-off thing. They couldn't give it a number because that would violate the original Sony contract. Where that's bitten us now is what I just said. They haven't remade it for that reason.
Interesting get around.
Yeah, it is. But so I liked that game a lot more originally. As I replayed it, I realized I have more of an affinity for Resident Evil 3 than I used to. Not that I dislike it or anything. I think I've just kind of grown to appreciate it more. And unfortunately, my interest in Code Veronica has depreciated a little. I can't really place why, but that's just kind of what happened. Maybe because I'd played it enough times. I don't really know. But Code Veronica was re-released last, to my knowledge, for the Xbox 360, and just kind of one of those 720p high def upscale ports or whatever from the source code. And then they have since made it backwards compatible with the Xbox One and Series X, at least if you're doing this console way. It got, weirdly enough, that game got a physical edition in like Hong Kong only for the 360. It's very bizarre. Doesn't matter. Anyway, so that's the cool game. But another fact about that game is there was the American release of it. And a lot of people think, oh, the PS2 version is better because it's called like Code Veronica X, where it has like extra bug patches and all this stuff. We actually got that on the Dreamcast, but in Japan only. It was called like Biohazard, Code Veronica something or other. It's actually very cheap, very easy to get. It is the same. It's called Complete Edition. That's what it is. So it has DLC. It's actually totally import friendly, by the way, because it plays in English. And for whatever reason, you always start off with an infinite ammo rocket launcher.
Well, that's handy.
It really
comes in handy.
It really does.
Right.
So I like that. Although there's text that's Japanese, but recently fans have fixed that. So,
well, sure they have. Fans are amazing.
Yeah, they really are.
You guys are amazing. I am so impressed by all the homebrews and just the fan, just all the different. It's not. I just plug games into consoles and play them. I'm so amazed by all you guys, all the creative.
So next up, what we have 3 more.
Well, you've done Resident Evil and Crazy Taxi.
No, 2 more.
Yeah.
Sonic Adventure 1 and 2.
Nice.
I'm going with 1.
Yeah.
Sonic Adventure 1 was, how do I put this? That was a transformative experience for me. The first time I played that was at a demo at a kiosk, and it was at Toys R Us. We just played that one level, Emerald Hill or Emerald City or whatever it's called right at the beginning. Sonic's running all the way through.
And you're like, wow, he's like running that way.
I was just like,
right.
This is a video game?
Yeah.
Like, I was blown away by the technological upgrade.
Yeah, you're like, wow, Sonic is kind of real.
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Because the previous Sonic I had known was like this version of it.
Yes.
Because I hadn't seen him, I didn't, Saturn, we barely even had it on Saturn. So the technological leap there, and then just the fact that the character can move so fluid, so
it's kind of like playing Super Mario 64 the first time because you're just, wow, Mario is like different now. He's like a cartoon character.
Yeah, but he wasn't unlike Mario 64 is a great game. I'm not trying to take anything away from it, but Mario's slow. Sonic was just right. The fact that this could work so seamlessly if you could do it right is just unbelievable.
So smooth.
Yeah, it blew my mind, and like that's why I wanted a Dreamcast. Like I needed to play this game. So when I eventually got it, I absolutely annihilated it. Played it. I got all the way through it, beat all, except for the big cat stuff. Like I couldn't figure out how to do the fishing segments.
Right.
And eventually I read in a magazine like there's no description of how to do it in the game.
Yeah, there's aspects of that game people skip.
Yeah. But so I eventually read in the magazine like, oh, if you ever want to do the fishing hook, once you hook the fish, you have to like roll the joystick. I was like, that's bull. There's no way. So then I do it and it totally works. I was like, now I can beat this game.
Right.
So, then I finished Baby Cat's stupid section, and then you unlock the Supersonic level, and I was like, right. So I was happy about that. The only thing that ever disappointed about the fact was you couldn't play a Supersonic in like the main levels. That was the Sonic 2 part of me was like, oh,
yeah.
But I love that game. Sonic Adventure 2 was a game I had been waiting for the entire run of the Dreamcast. I was just like, where is this game? Where is this game? It comes out, like, I believe it was the summer of 2001. Barely makes it out. And it was good, but buggy. Very buggy. Like, the voice acting bugginess, like, was off. Like, there's some lines that aren't even dubbed correctly. Like, they left the Japanese voice in there. Like, if you play as Robotnik, whenever he's excited, like, the end of a level when he's beating, he goes, Yosh! That's Japanese for good. They didn't dub it.
Wow.
So there's a bunch of mistakes like that. Then they cleaned
sloppy
up
programming and
the time crunch. The
Time
Dreamcast
crunch.
was
Typically
already
the case
considered defunct by the time that game came out.
Right.
They barely got that game out. I'm just glad they got it out.
Yeah.
Because it could have easily, because it eventually got the GameCube version. They could have easily said Nintendo's going to pay us a bunch to just keep it here.
Yeah.
But I think they wanted it out on the Dreamcast because it was also the 10th birthday, which was another factor. But anyway, here's a little oldie for you. 2001, Sonic turned 10. It's 2023 now.
Right.
Sonic has been a character longer as a third-party character than he ever was first-party. He was a first-party character for 10 years. He's been a
There's so many
third-party
ways
character
to make me feel old.
Yeah, you're welcome. He's been a third-party character for 22 years, more than 2 times the amount he was ever a first-party character. Anyway, so the second game, I loved the Sonic segments. I loved the Shadow segments because the whole thing was like, you can play as the good guys and the bad guys. They called them Hero and Dark.
Yeah. That was novel for the time.
It was.
Or at least unusual.
Yeah, it became a thing more for a while after that. But the Shadow segments were really good. Enjoyed that for the same reason. I'm here to play Sonic. The Tails and Robotnik stuff where you have like this little like gearbot thing and you're like shooting at stuff, I was kind of like, these are okay. They're not really what I'm here for.
Right.
The Rouge and Knuckles stuff where you just constantly flying around trying to treasure track, hate it. Absolutely hate it. To the point where, like, I still have my original save file from, like, when I beat the game. So once you beat the game, it gives you the option to play through the story, but you can skip between stuff if you've already played it before. Yeah. So I'll play the game again, and every time I get to a Rouge or Knuckles, I'm like, no, thank you. Skip back to the
feel like
main menu.
grinding or something?
No, you just skip past it.
But, I mean, playing those Rouge and that...
Like when I originally did it?
Yeah, did it just
Ask 2001 me, who was like, this is what I'm doing today.
Right.
2023 me, actually 2002 onward me was like,
okay, gotcha.
So I hate those segments. They're boring as
Right.
snot. You're just flying around and be like, all right, where is it? Oh, no.
Fetch quest.
Yeah, it just feels like a waste of time.
Yeah.
And then as an adult, I recognize they're just recycling assets because they've already built the stage.
Right.
So they're just trying to reuse it. And it's like, you're just filling time. This is stupid. And the plot to me was nowhere near as interesting as Sonic Adventure 1's plot. But anyway, so I love those games more so the first one.
Right. Yeah, that first one was really, really interesting game.
I'll make the case those are well, I guess I won't make it. Anyway, I'll take it back. I was going to say they're the last real Sonic games. I changed my mind. That's not true. Sonic Mania, Sonic Generations.
Mania.
Yeah. I take that back. So number one?
Let's do number one, yes.
Probably really obvious.
Yeah, I
kind
of guessed this one.
Yeah.
You're kind of known for it.
Yeah. Everybody knows me as the guy who plays all those Japanese date sims. That's the one. Orange Blossom or whatever it is. No, obviously not that. Shenmue 1 and 2.
Right.
Specifically Shenmue 2 if I was forced to pick between my children.
Gun to your head.
Yeah, this child lives. Shenmue 2.
Right.
But yeah, those games I think are absolutely phenomenal, and I've talked to that to death, on my channel.
Never played either one of them. I've never played Shenmue. Sorry, my bad. You're going home now, aren't you? You're not gonna. You're gonna leave.
I'm just in shock.
Yeah,
Like,
just never. Yeah, sorry.
well, so those games.
Have you played Yar's Revenge on the 2600?
Yeah,
Okay, never mind.
not excessively. I have tried it.
All right, keep going.
All right, so Shenmue 1 and 2. I would define Shenmue as an experience, and this includes the third one.
Yes.
Shenmue is this really grandiose idea Yu Suzuki had.
I remember reading about it.
Yeah. You really should play it, you weirdo. Like, all right, so this dude's sitting over here playing like ColecoVision stuff, and I'm just like,
Yep.
the greatest game ever made is whatever. Doesn't matter. So Shenmue 1 is an interesting game because for the time, the tech, it was the first open world game ever. But what Yu Suzuki had really set out to do was create this like really grandiose concept of the open world RPG. He called it FREE or free, and free roam. What was it? Free roam eyes entertainment or something like that. And the whole idea was what we now define as the open world, but with a very focused narrative. And the idea was to get you hooked into the minutia of the game by making everything very, very realistic. To the point where the player might even question what the point of any of this is. Like, you can walk through Ryo's house and you can go into his kitchen and there's like a bowl of oranges and you can just pick, well, that's actually his living room, but you can pick up a bowl, you can just pick up the orange and just investigate it. You have no reason to do that.
Very unusual for the time.
Yeah, the player has no reason to do that.
Right.
There's a whole lot of stuff in that game.
It's like later, and then Grand Theft Auto would adopt that, where you just do things that you don't really need.
You are
to
insulting
or have to do.
me. Like, no.
But what I'm saying is it paved the way for those types of games where you just did things because you could.
I disagree, but you haven't played it.
Well, it sounds to me like...
Okay, then I'll finish my thought.
Yeah.
And then you can correct me, and then I'll correct you. This is our banter. All right. So, but the thing with Shenmue was that the whole idea with it really was like to create the sense of immersion for the player. Now, I will argue that things like GTA will have massive maps, but most of the stuff is not directly interactable. Like, yes, you can open any car and run off with it and crash and stuff. You can do stuff like that. But like, the extreme minutia stuff with Shenmue, you could literally go into Ryo's house and open up every single cabinet in his house for no reason.
So it was much more interactive.
Yes, very interactive, but obviously a smaller scale. Now, the whole point of this was that if the player was doing this, they would feel a sense of like, this is my home, this is, I feel connected to this. That way you get extremely attached to the characters. There's a reason the Shenmue fan base turned out to be as rabid as we did, because we don't just see it as a video game, we see it kind of like as an extension of family almost, which is insane. I know that sounds, but you really won't understand that unless you play it.
Do people that play Half-Life get that vibe, kind of?
I couldn't tell you.
Right.
They do want that third one, though. We know that. Which we did, too. We actually got our third one, although it didn't finish the series, but we knew that going in. Or at least those of us who actually read what Yu Suzuki had to say. I'm still bitter about that. Anyway, so point is, so I love those games. I think they're incredible. The story that unfolds from them is incredibly unique. The way in which it's told is unique. The gameplay itself is unique. Now it tries to throw in some arcadey elements here and there because
you can go into an arcade and play some games.
Yes,
right?
you can.
Yeah.
The way Yu Suzuki, he created a whole bunch of Sega's iconic arcade games. So he actually kind of made a lot of references to that game. Or here, let me give you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. How this game is really smart, and the game does not hold your hand at all. There's no waypoints. You have to play investigator as the player. You don't get clues. So here's the thing. This took me years to understand this. I actually don't think I understood this until like 3 years ago. So in the arcade you're talking about in Shenmue 1, when you go in there, there's only, there's a couple like
Outrun.
Well, I'll explain. Like, I'm here, I'll explain it. So like you go into this arcade, there's a couple of like random interactive things like there's a jukebox, there's this punching thing. The punching thing, the purpose of it is to practice the concept of QTEs, which Shenmue did create, which a lot of people are not happy with it for, but it was more competently used in that game. Anyway, the two games that are in there that are arcade classics are Space Harrier and Hang On. And it, to a glance, it's like, oh, that's cool. You just put these two random games in here. You can just play them.
Good games.
Yeah. There's actually a reason they're there. They were selected for a very particular purpose, and it wasn't just because Yu Suzuki made them. I'll break down Hang On first. What is Hang On? You probably know that
motorcycle game.
Right? And so
third person behind the...
So what does it teach you when you're playing it?
To steer and drive.
Now, if only Shenmue had a section where you had to race a motorcycle. See, the motorcycle section in that game is one of the hardest parts of the game that nobody's any good at unless you play it 100 times. Unless you had the foresight, the unknown foresight, as it were, to go into the arcade and play Hang On a bunch. Had you done that, you would have the skill set for that later part of the game without realizing it.
Right.
Now, the other part of the game is, so the villain of the Shenmue franchise, this guy named Londi. He's a guy who comes in, he has this big green silk robe, he's got this big dragon mirror, and you have to basically chase him down. It's like a mystery type of game you're trying to unfold. Now, you as the main character are a character dressed in blue jeans, a white shirt, and like a leather jacket. Okay? Now, if you go in and play Space Harrier is a game about a guy in blue jeans, white shirt, and a leather coat chasing a green dragon.
Incredible third-person shooter. Love it.
Everything in Shenmue is that level of deep, where it's been thought out 20 steps further than you think, and everything builds into other things. So Shenmue 1 actually has a whole bunch of choices you think are irrelevant that actually affect your game save at the end, which actually then get connected to the second game and alter all the decisions with it, some of which seem a lot more subtle than they actually are. So where it bothered people is when they eventually made the third one and all that stuff couldn't go with it, but you know, it is what it is. But Shenmue 3 ends with the series only being 40% complete. So 60%, the majority of Shenmue is still theoretically in front of us.
Wow.
Anyway, you can tell I'm passionate about it. There's a reason Sega had me involved with it.
I mean, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. You should play it. The one thing I will say too, though, modern gamers, when it comes to Shenmue, it is a game that absolutely demands your patience. It does not say, like, here's your goal, go beat that guy up. It doesn't do anything like that. It says, here's the game, it started, good luck to you.
I tend to be an impatient gamer.
Yeah, so. you probably, yeah. So the thing with it is it does demand that patience.
Yes.
And I promise you though, if you're actually willing to commit to it,
it's worth it.
You will be really happy with it. Like I said, there's a reason Shenmue fans are so rabidly attached to it.
Yeah.
I've only encountered a handful of people ever who actually got all the way through the Shenmue games. Like, well, that sucked.
Like, meh.
The thing is, I've seen some people where they just didn't click with it. That happens a lot. Most people give up like maybe a fourth of the way through the first game because they just can't figure out what they're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And they get frustrated.
That would probably be me.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is like these days everybody goes to strategy guides, which I actually really don't recommend with a game like Shenmue, even though it might seem tempting. Yeah. Because if you're not the one figuring it out, you're missing out on why you're playing.
Fun of discovery.
Yeah, the fun of the discovery is actually the rewarding element. So I pitch that game to everybody, but I always give them that preference.
That was a ColecoVision reference, by the way.
I wouldn't get it because I'm too not old. But anyway, I'm old, but not old enough. I have a ColecoVision. What? What of it? What?
Right. Every manual. The fun of discovery.
Yes. So point is, if you're gonna play that game, just go into it knowing it's a rich, rewarding experience, but don't ruin it for yourself. Don't look around for like guides online to do it quicker. Like there's no point.
Just explore.
Yeah, just explore. That's the whole point. You're supposed to explore stuff and learn stuff. Every time I play that game, I discover new things I had no idea were in it.
That's cool.
Every time.
That's amazing.
I've been playing it since 2000. I've been playing that game since 2000.
And here we are in 2023.
And every time I play it, I'm like, oh, I had no idea that was a thing.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I can see why that game has a life.
Yeah.
Has there are certain titles that just live on. You know, there are some many games are forgotten about, but something like Shenmue, it's one that people still talk about.
Yeah, I'll also say this, because Shenmue 2 is actually my favorite. I think it's better than Shenmue 1. Shenmue 1, if you think about, so again, Yu Suzuki was setting up this essentially RPG. Every RPG starts off with a little prologue explaining where your character came from or whatever. Shenmue 1 is just the prologue. They let you play the prologue. Shenmue 2 is like where the game actually starts.
Oh, wow.
As weird as that might sound.
Yeah.
Because Shenmue 1 is just about making you feel familiar, understand where the character's from, his motivations, all that. And then Shenmue 2 is like, all right, let's get this going. It's a much more fast-paced game, but then, it just continues on. Eventually you get Shenmue 3 and
Sounds
Shenmue
amazing.
Fans, it is. Yeah,
Sounds
Shenmue fans
amazing,
we're very patient, very dedicated people. You kind of have to be like that.
And here I am over my Dreamcast playing a lame beat 'em up called not beat 'em up, a hack and slash Soul Fighter. When I could be playing Shenmue, what's my problem?
I agree.
All right, guys, thank you so much for watching. Adam, thank you for being on the channel. Be sure and check out Adam's channel, Flying and Eating, and his gaming channel. I will put those links in the description here. Let me know in the comments. Let us know what are your top 5 Dreamcast games or just your favorite Dreamcast game of all time. I would love to hear from you guys. Always find it interesting to know what games you guys like, and you know, if I play them, if I like them, that kind of thing. Let me know. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. Probably the longest top 5 video in the history of YouTube.
Yeah, but see, you got actual background. We could have been like, okay, Resident Evil, Ikaruga, Sonic Adventure, Shenmue, and whatever the hell.
That game good, that one beat up, that one good too. We could do that, but no, we went into some history and had some fun. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you had fun watching as well, and we will talk to you in another video later on. Sega.
It's me, Mario!